Man, here with Shady Spring assistant basketball coach Russ Jordan. Russ doing a story on the Dave Wills gym here, and as we can see it there with the plaque and the name. I know that you were close friends with him. What does this mean to you to have a friend like that who kind of brought you here?
Yeah, well, I became a pastor at Grandview Christian Church when I was 24 years old. That's what moved us in this area. I was in pharmaceutical sales, and Dave was leader at Grandview Christian Church, and they were looking for a preacher. And he heard me speak at a men's meeting, and they invited me to come out to Grandview Christian Church. And a couple months later, I became their minister at 24. And then Dave at the time was the athletic director here at the high school. And I told him, I said, one of the things I really like to do is get involved in the community. And he knew I was from Indiana and played basketball. And he said, would you be interested in helping out with the basketball program? So he introduced me to Steve Clark and Dave Shaw. And when I was 24, I started helping Coach Clark and Coach Shaw with the basketball program.
And you stayed on with Ronnie. I imagine that, Dave was the one that brought Ronnie here. So, I mean, it's really worked out in that regard, I mean, with the success you've had.
Yeah. I went back to Indiana because my family got sick. Being an only child, I went back to help out with family. And then the whole time I stayed in touch with Dave. We just became really good friends. And Dave said, if you ever want to come back to West Virginia, let me know. You can come back to church. And my family moved back when Sam, my son, was in 4th grade. And at that time, Steve was transitioning out of the head coach, and Ronnie was becoming a head coach. He introduced me to Ronnie, and Dave was the one at that time. He was assistant principal here at the high school, and I was at the church, and we started the Shady Elite basketball program out of Grandview Christian Church when all these juniors that we have right now were in 4th grade.
So that's kind of what was kind of the start of what the program's become now. What do you think you would think about the unprecedented success by the school in athletics over the last 3 or 4 years?
He'd be really happy, Dave. I mean, he loved this school. Dave Wills is Shady Spring, and I'm glad that you're paying recognition to the gym, because now we have a group of students. He's been gone for over 5 years that we know who he is. And he gave every ounce he could to this school. You can't separate Shady Spring without Dave Wills. So I know, he was in wrestling, but he was always at the football games, basketball games, tennis, softball. I mean, he was the administrator that came to the games and supported the kids and the family. He loved this community.
His son told me, I think the night before he was in the car wreck, which I think led to later problems. I think he said he was benching 225.
Yeah, he was
over at the football.
Yeah, he had
and in the press box over there, I guess, or in the weight room. Rather.
Yeah, he had an aortic aneurysm, and but the day before he was over there in the weight room and he was benching 225. He'd like to see if he could still do it. And the thing about Dave, he just retired right before he passed away. So he was just getting ready to start enjoying his life, him and Melinda and the boys. Like I said, we go way back. When I was 24, and let's just say I'm older than 24 now, but I've known Dave and his family for over 20 years.
His son told me that you probably would have wanted no part of having his name on any of this.
It would have. He's a very humble man. And it would have probably bothered him a little bit, but I'm thankful for, at the time, the principal is Deanna Massey, and she said it was a no-brainer when the remodel happened and the gym was built. She said, I'd like to be able to name the gymnasium after David.
He served about every position here at the school too, didn't he?
He did everything, man. The thing I remember so much about Dave, he had a heart for the children of the Burlington home here in Shady. Where kids come from foster care, and he would go, and if he saw like a thing of milk that some kid just threw away, but it was on top and it hadn't been damaged, he'd grab that and he'd save that for whoever wanted it. I mean, Dave had a heart for people. He'd go on mission trips to Haiti. He'd take care of anybody and anything he could do for his community and his people. I mean, he was a hero. I remember at the funeral in the old gym, that whole old gym before the side was torn down, it was packed in there. It was standing room only. That's where we had to have the funeral because it was the only place big enough to hold all the people who came through.
So it must be special for you to see that name every day you walk in there too.
It means a lot. I mean, it brings a lot of good memories. A lot of times with Steve and Coach Clark and Dave, and to know that we got teams that are competing at the state level. I mean, I just know how much joy it would have brought to him to see us, not just basketball, but volleyball. And, you know, we got a lot of teams that are competing at state level. Cross-country runners, softball's always right there. I think football's going to be there soon. I mean, all of that would make him, because he understood what sports was all about, how it raised young people.
Okay. Hey, Russ, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks, David.